Like once that word pussy came to me, it was like it took this work that I was already doing that felt like this very like beautiful, like divine feminine work, like reclaiming all this stuff. And then the word pussy like ground all that power and reclamation like into my body.
Jenny Braxton is a somatic sexuality and relationship intimacy coach, founder of the School of Pussy-Centered Living, and the host of the Pussy-Centered Living podcast. Known on the internet streets as the Pussy Queen, Jenny helps women reclaim their pleasure, power, and deep feminine wisdom by reconnecting their bodies and erotic nature. Her journey began after motherhood, when painful sex and low desire led her to rediscover pussy not just as anatomy, but as a source of healing, power, and truth. Now, through a trauma-informed and tantra-based methodology, Jenny guides women and couples to awaken their pleasure, reclaim their sexuality, and create the intimate, passionate relationships they crave.
Like the word pussy is just like, it's powerful and it's seductive, and it's just like that this is the word. Living pussy-centered is like living in tune with the deepest part of yourself, and also with pleasure as like our North Star. Pleasure is the embodiment of pussy. It's actually one of the most like nourishing, sustainable, like powerful ways to just be who we are and to do what we do in the world.
A 2023 Harvard study found that out of everything it looked for as far as the root causes to help people have longer, healthier lives, the number one thing the study found that people should focus on is their relationships. So to help solve some of the relationship crisis that we have around the world, I have created this upcoming 3-day eternal honeymoon extravaganza. I am bringing together 15 speakers from around the world in the love, sex, intimacy, and relationship space to help you finally have better passion, have better sex, have better connection, communication, intimacy, and more. And this event is normally $397, and it is on sale right now for $1. So I hope you will prioritize your relationships and join me at this epic event. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode on the Libido Lounge. I'm your host, board certified sexologist, Dr. Diane. And we have an amazing guest today. We're going to dispel some myths, and we're going to really break down something that a lot of people are kind of scared of, which is the word pussy. So we're going to break this down today, and we're going to talk about why this word is not what we say it is, meaning why this doesn't mean, hey, you're weak, or all these other different like ways that this word is framed. And we're really going to start to hopefully change your mind and the way you look at this word to actually realize that there's a huge problem in many ways with the way we're using our terms of feminine anatomy. Vagina, for example, doesn't really cover everything that the female has, right? It's just one part of her genitalia. And so when we use a word like pussy, it encompasses so much more. And we're really looking to reclaim this word. We're really looking to allow ourselves to sink deeper into the beauty of this word. And we're really looking to form, as women, new relationships with this part of our body that oftentimes we have so much disconnect in. So all of that and more with our guest, Jenny, today. And remember, we're doing this in 2 parts, like always. So if you want that exclusive content, make sure you go into the show notes, go to our Libido Club where you can sign up to get the exclusive conversation, part 2. But for now, welcome to the lounge, Jenny. It's so great to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am full of pleasure to be here.
Ditto. Same here. And let's jump right in. I think, some people that have listened to this may know Mama Gina's work and her book on pussy reclamation. But I think for a lot of people, this whole concept of like, oh my goodness, what are we saying? What are we saying online? What are we saying on this podcast? Turn it down. It's like, it can be a big deal to hear the word pussy out loud. So tell us about your relationship with, how did you begin this work? How did you actually start to reframe this word? And why do you think this is so important for both women as well as for couples?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the best way to answer the question, particularly of like, why do I use this word? Why do I think it's so important, is to tell a little bit, of my own journey, which is that I got called into bringing into this work. I wasn't a sex and relationship intimacy coach when I began. I actually started as a empowered birth coach, supporting women in having empowered birth, not like a doula, but like doing the psychological, emotional healing to prepare for it. And that kind of like started me off into the world of pleasure, because I started to bring pleasure into my work as a way of supporting women in birth. And so, I mean, we could use the whole segment just to talk about the story of like how I got here. So I'm giving you the real short version. But it was actually a program that I was in to be an ecstatic birth practitioner. So, really helping women have birth where pleasure is at the forefront. And it was in that program where I was actually introduced to Mama Gina, and to her book, Pussy, a Reclamation. And so, before that point, I mean, obviously, I was already in my own journey. I had been doing my own kind of like sexual healing work, and I was really reclaiming pleasure as something for myself through the way I was learning to bring that into birth. And I had done a lot of healing around kind of my pelvic bowl and my feminine nature and being and like all of this stuff. But then when I heard Mama Gina speak and I read her book, I was like, it's pussy, like pussy. And so when people ask me like, why do you use that word? The most truest answer I can give you is like, that's what she wants to be called. Like, once that word pussy came to me, it was like it took this work that I was already doing that felt like this very like beautiful, like divine feminine work, like reclaiming all this stuff. And then the word pussy like ground all that power and reclamation like into my body, so that it wasn't only just the like beautiful side of the feminine, it also encompasses the fullness of the feminine, right? Like the grit and the raw and like the full spectrum. And it just, I felt differently in my body. I just honestly, it just turned me on. And so it was like once pussy came in, there was no going back. And so it took me down the road of, shifting my practice from focusing on birth to focusing on sexuality in general, and really in reclaiming this word. Because as you said, not only do we not have great references for our anatomy, like, yeah, vagina is incomplete. People aren't generally saying vulva. And to be honest, those words, like, I can honor them and respect them, but they don't actually turn me on. But like the word pussy is just like, it's powerful and it's seductive. And it's just like that this is the word.
Yeah, I love it. And we're going to link everybody. We're going to link Mama Gina's book in the show notes for you so you guys can check that out if you haven't. One of my favorite like parts of that book, I've read it a few times because it's just genius, I think. One of my favorite parts is when she talks about GPS and like the GPS. It's an acronym she renames for Great Pussy in the Sky. Right. And it's like, it's really like exactly like you're saying, it's so much more than just this part of our body. It's like the orientation to our intuition, to our knowing, to this is right way, this is wrong way, like our guide, our compass, all of these things.
Yeah.
So I'm curious because I think to me, some of the negative connotation with this word is in some ways like linked to, I think, societal and cultural negative connotations just to like female sexuality.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you in your work does it like come up sometimes where you use this word and is like and you have people react in some sort of way, and does that tell you something about hey how you can guide them to heal, to open up and expand more to pleasure? Like where do you actually use or do you use this word from a informing you in your work?
Yeah, I love that question. That's a great question. So, really, the thing that's coming up for me is like, I'm not here to convince anyone of the word pussy. Like, I have met plenty of people who are like, oh no, oh no. And in fact, when I really started using the word pussy and, started shifting my business at the time, I had this like a pretty big Facebook group. It was called Sacred Birth Conscious Mama, like so beautiful. And I changed the name of the group to Pussy Centered Living, and people freaked out.
Uh-huh.
Not everybody, but there was a good number of people who freaked out. And so, if someone is just like, no, with that word, I'm not here to convince them. But if they're like, oh, even though I'm feeling some trigger here, even though this is bringing something up inside of me, like I want to know more, like something's drawing me in, that's where I come in. And wherever we have places where we feel triggered or we feel shame or we're just like, oh, that word pussy, like, oh, right? That is always a sign that there is a portal into our power there available for us. And so that's really how I approach, anything that this word or our sexuality might bring up inside of us. It's like, okay, if you're feeling this and you want to move through this, like this is a portal into so much healing, so much expansion, so much power and pleasure. And I'm not going to force anybody to use that word. In fact, I mean, I have students who are in my world, who've been in my world for a while. They love this work. They love the reclamation of it. But pussy actually isn't their favorite word. Like they have other words they rather use, and that is totally fine. It's just for me, that's the word I use. And if you're going to be in my world, you are going to hear it a lot.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah.
It's fair. So then when this conversation, right, your work on pussy-centered living, like what does that really mean from you? Like from your terminology, like to live from your pussy, what does that mean? And with that, like where do people, and obviously we're talking about women here, like where do women have problems when they are, say, trying to live from their pussy, or they don't even realize they're not living from their pussy? Like, what does that like look like, I guess is my question, from a standpoint of, yeah, I'm disconnected from this area. I'm not living from this area. How might that show up in day-to-day life?
Yeah, such great questions. So as you mentioned a moment ago, like when we're using the word pussy, it's encompassing so much more than just this like, physical anatomy on our body. She is a connection source to this really deepest core part of ourself, like our truth, our intuition, this wisdom. She's not just a part on our physical body, like she's an energetic portal, right? She's actually a part of our psyche. And so we could almost say that like living pussy centered is like living in tune with the deepest part of yourself, and also with pleasure as like our North Star, right? Pleasure, I say that pleasure is the embodiment of pussy and the language of pussy, and its expression of pussy centered living. And it's not, something that is frivolous or a luxury or that should be a reward. It's actually one of the most like nourishing, sustainable, like powerful ways to just be who we are and to do what we do in the world. And so, pussy centered living is like living from that source. It's not putting our power or our knowing, outside of us. It's really centering this within our own selves. And I also use the word pussy kind of as a synonym for feminine energy, right? And so when I say pussy, it's this source, it's our pleasure, it's our sexuality, it's this physical anatomy, it's our ability to be in tune with our emotions and to process them in healthy ways, and to be able to what I call emotional alchemy, where we can meet whatever we're feeling, whatever experience we're having in emotions, and we can actually shift that into feeling pleasure or feeling better or feeling how we want to be. Those are all kind of the realms of pussy and pussy centered living. And so it's also, it's about putting this like inner wisdom, this pleasure that is our compass first, like tuning into that first, like centering ourselves around that, and then showing up from there, moving through the world from there. And that is not, one of the biggest limiting beliefs that people come up against around, claiming pleasure or pussy-centered living, is this piece of like, well, if I put my pleasure first and I prioritize that, like, aren't I going to become this just selfish person? Like I should be, we are conditioned to put others first, to be givers first and foremost, which I mean, obviously it's beautiful to give and to take care of others. But when we center that first and we prioritize that, we burn out. It's unsustainable. We get grouchy and irritated and bitter. We have really big challenges going through menopause. Like it has a lot of repercussions. And so along those lines, the other part of your question was, how can we become aware that we even are disconnected? I mean, if it's hard for you to say the word pussy or vagina or vulva without like a little bit of a cringe, like there's a sign right there. And said, and all of this said with so much love, and also everything I'm saying I have experienced and also lived through. One of the like so simple but kind of life-changing things that I experienced once I started paying attention, like listening to my pussy, living from this place, as I realized how much I was running around like having to pee, having to go to the bathroom. But I was so like disconnected. It'd be like, oh, well, no, I have to finish all of these dishes before I can stop and go to the bathroom, right? So we are literally disconnected from our body. We override pain and discomfort. It's often about prioritizing our doing, right? Our productivity, like, oh, I'm too, busy to tune into how I feel or to what might be feeling good. And so, me and symptoms really are feeling stressed, feeling like we don't have a lot of I don't know if control is the right word, but like ability to feel the way that we want to feel, right? If we feel like, oh, I wake up and I'm feeling kind of sad or blah or meh or angry or depressed, and I have no way of shifting out of that, that's actually a disconnection from pussy right there and how we feel in our pleasure. Having blocks or resistances around our sexuality, not being deeply connected to our sexual pleasure and being able to share that with somebody else, right? These are all symptoms of disconnection. And once again, like this is not our fault. I mean, I always like to give the context of like, hey, remember, we've been living in a misogynistic patriarchy for 5,000 years, like, and these are the repercussions. And so it's not our fault. And also, no one can reclaim this for ourselves. No one can reconnect except for our own selves. And that's the beautiful thing about it. We can decide to do it.
Just a quick interlude because I want to address that it is so common that people are struggling to prioritize their relationships and their intimate life between jobs and kids and caring for elderly parents and so much more. Sometimes it can just feel like a last thing on the to-do list. Now, if you're struggling with that, or if you're struggling with having better sex or having good orgasms or lasting longer or erectile dysfunction or pelvic pain or something else in the sex, emotional, relationship, intimacy space, you are definitely going to want to take a moment right now so you remember to sign up for the Eternal Honeymoon Extravaganza. I have 15 speakers that I've specially curated and picked from around the world for a very complete and holistic look and teachings and actionable steps from everything under the sun, sex, and relationships. So take a quick minute, go click on that link and register to make sure you remember. And I look forward to seeing you there. Now let's get back to our episode. Yeah, I really like looking at stuff like this as it's not our fault, but it is our responsibility.
Right. 100%. I say it all the time.
Like we are the ones that are in charge of actually fixing this, no matter how we got here. The fact is that we are here now and, we can talk about all the reasons why, and they can be interesting and helpful sometimes to learn. But really, in order to fix it and move on, we have to take responsibility for getting ourselves into a new state. Have you ever, do you know Dr. Nayan Weiss? Have you ever met her before?
No, I haven't.
I'm gonna put you two in touch if you want. She's a great researcher and studies a lot on female orgasms, not organisms, female orgasms. I learned the term from her, healthy hedonism. And I just absolutely love this term so much. I've repeated it many times in my work, giving her credit because I think it just says so much to this concept we're talking about here around, okay, pleasure, like hedonism was always thought of like this bad thing. Like there's so much negative connotation to the pursuit of pleasure, which is what hedonism is. But essentially, this is one of the most fundamental ways that we can heal our body, our relationships, our mind, our souls, our spirit, on and on. And like you said, it's like putting ourselves first in these scenarios is something that used to be thought of as bad. And I think there's just more and more movement now to realizing it's like, the obvious thing that people say sometimes, it's like, oh, the airplane, put your mask on first before your child. But that of course applies to all of life. Like when we are whole, we are coming from wholeness and, on the road to wholeness, I should say, because nobody is ever 100% there. We're able to give so much more.
100%.
So to make this actionable, right? Because I always like making things actionable for people as much as possible. So, if people are listening to your description, which was wonderful on, okay, this disconnection from pussy, there's disconnection from your female anatomy or whatever word feels or words feel good to use there. And realizing that, wow, yeah, I don't feel pleasure or I don't follow my intuition or I'm constantly stressed out and not listening to the signs. Like I need to urinate, like you said. Do you find like with your work, there's like a step by step order? I definitely know firsthand from my work that everybody is slightly different, of course, but when it comes to action, like what sort of actionable steps do you offer for people around this is a first step of actually really getting back in tune with this part of your body, not just from a sexual pleasure perspective, but from just a general life pleasure and intuition and attunement to one's own, mind, body, soul, spirit.
Yeah, yeah, I love this. And this is so important, right? Like we have to be able to take action because that's how we actually like put all this like healing and reclamation into practice.
Yes.
And so I am a mama of three. They're not that little anymore. I've got a 16-year-old, 14-year-old, and 9-year-old, but I'm a busy mama. And so I really like things to be, simple yet effective, and also things I can be doing as I'm moving through my life. Like it's rare that I do, like some hour-long pleasure practice, unless I'm making love to my husband, right? But like I like things to be really accessible to us. And that's one of those things that I love about connecting back to pussy and connecting to our pleasure is it does not have to be like an extra thing on your to-do list. You don't have to go take like time out of your life to focus on it, although that obviously is very helpful as well. And there's definitely a time and place for that, right? But we can start connecting literally in a moment. And one of the first ways I like to do it is more through an energetic type of connection where you're literally just, maybe you're closing your eyes or softening your gaze and you are just taking a breath, imagining that you're drawing that breath all the way down into your pussy. And if you feel comfortable, you could even like put your hands, like cup your hands over your pussy, even just over your clothes, if it's helpful to kind of, bring your breath down to that area and just breathe, just feel, like just take a moment to be present in that part of you, even just literally for one breath. Obviously, if we can do more than that, great. But even just one breath done consistently over time can make a huge difference. And so that can be just like a starting point, and then starting to really notice how we feel. Like as I started to do that, that's when I was like, wow, I have to pee like all of the time. And I'm making myself hold it instead of just taking care of my needs. And so we just start to notice. And one of the things that we may notice is like, wow, I don't really feel anything. Like, gosh, there's not a lot here. And maybe it does feel just kind of numb or disconnected, or just like, I don't know if I'm doing it right. I can't feel anything. And that's fine. Like that just is a symptom of the disconnection. And what happens when we are disconnected is there's literally a disconnect in the neural pathways between our brain and our body. And so we might not have a lot of sensation there because we just get to really strengthen those pathways. And we can do that by just breathing into our pussy and being willing to feel what's there. And if it is numbness, if it is a sense of kind of disconnection, like being curious about that. And so really, I think the first piece that we get to do is just to like forgive ourselves for not listening to our bodies in the past, for having numbness, for feeling shame or whatever might come up, is like, it's okay. There's a reason that we're here. And like we're both saying, it is our responsibility to reclaim this, but we don't have to, make this something that we're like, oh, have done a bad job on or failed. Like, no, and we can shift this. So that's the first way I love to start, right? With just using that breath. I also really like to do what I call pussy sensing meditations with people, where you're now starting to not just breathe into just like hurt in general, but start to notice, like, can I even bring my awareness to different parts of my pussy? Like, can I breathe into my clit? Can I breathe into my labia? Like, can I start to bring more awareness to this area? And once again, those are things that we can do very simply. And it's our pussy is, I love to say, right, she's a source of our power, but it's like, okay, well, what does that really mean? It can mean many different things, but part of that is she is an energetic source. She is a powerful source of energy. And when we are disconnected from her, we do not have access to that energy. But when we start to connect, even if it's just as simply as breathing into her and feeling her, we start to awaken that energy source. And then, of course, we can go, much deeper into healing and reclamation, right? This is a starting practice. There are many, many more things we can do, but the more we do it, the more we liberate that energy. And I mean, just as a real simple real life example, 3 kids, we also live out in the country. So I do a lot of driving of my children around to all their activities. And that used to be such a stressful experience for me. I'm just like, oh, these kids in the car and they're fighting or crying or like whatever is happening. And we would get to the place and I'd just be kind of like irritated. And I started doing this very thing we're talking about, where as I'm driving, all I'm doing is just like breathing with presence, like in and out of my pussy. And I feel amazing. And like, maybe the kids are still crying and fighting, but I'm like, oh. And actually what happens is people, because we are all, energetically connected, when I do that, it's amazing. I can have kids who are like screaming and crying in the car. I like breathe into my pussy and focus on that. And then the next thing I know, I'm like, wow, everybody's like really quiet and happy and content back there. And I'm feeling alive and full of energy. And so that's a beautiful way we can start. I do also love to start with like hands-on practices of connecting and connecting with our pleasure. That could be like a self-pleasure practice, aka masturbation, but I don't love the word masturbation, so I call it self-pleasure, right? Where there's no goal, we're not trying to give ourselves an orgasm, we're just there for the point of connecting and finding our pleasure and awakening to sensation. Obviously that does require, we can't always do that right in the moment. Like that does require a little bit of time set aside, but it's worth it. But then one last thing that is, something that we can really focus on that's so accessible is attuning to our pleasure, and pleasure as an activation of our senses, right? So pleasure is an experience in our body, and it comes through our senses. And once again, as I said, like pleasure is the language and the embodiment and the expression of pussy. So when we're activating our pleasure, we are connecting to that part of us as well. And we could do that as in like, I'm sitting here teaching and talking, and I have this like smooth rock on my desk that I love to just like touch and stroke. And there's so much pleasure in that touch, right? Or we can look out the window at some beautiful nature or a flower or a painting that we have and receive pleasure from that experience. I have this scented candle at my desk that I just love, and I breathe in the smell of it, and I'm just like, oh, it smells so good. And I let myself really receive that pleasure. So we always have ways to activate and access our pleasure in any moment. And it really is an attunement to it and a choice to feel into it. So those are some simple kind of beginning practical steps that I would suggest.
Yeah, so helpful. Thank you for all of that. And just to emphasize a couple of things you said, like I do think like just emphasizing for people this emotions and is almost like flags, right? So if you're like tuning into this and you're like, I feel weird, or I'm doing it wrong, or I don't have sensation, or I am disembodied, it's just your advice on don't make it wrong. Like actually just notice this and just say, hey, that's where I am, and it's not good or bad. It just is. Really can take that charge away. And these things are really they're just flags. They're just information to let us know, hey, this is what's happening. And then we have the opportunity to move into a different state, to move into a different space, and to allow something else to happen. And I hope some of our listeners are taking this so much to heart that as they're listening to you, you've given like some really good practical advice that people that are listening could be doing in this moment, right? Like feeling the pleasure of your pelvic floor resting deeply in your chair, right? As you are listening to this, right? If you're on a walk and listening to or watching the leaves blow in the wind and taking pleasure in the beauty of that, like all of these opportunities all day long, so that as you're listening, you could like really put this into practice real immediate in real time. So I want to make sure that everybody is aware that in part 2, we're going to be talking about the relationship of pussy, of being embodied with things like low libido, or how this impacts desire for your partner, where this comes into more the partnership. So definitely get this from part 2. But I do want to make sure before we pop over to part 2 that people know about some of your great offerings. I know you have your own podcast. You have a free meditation for our listeners I imagine it's on how to access your pussy and get into that energy more. Is that what that meditation's about?
Yes. In a nutshell, yes.
Perfect. Well, we will link that in the show notes for sure. And then what else did you want to make sure that our listeners knew about as far as how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm on social media, so you can come hang out with me on Facebook or Instagram. And then I did also I just finished teaching a workshop, which is going to be an evergreen program called How to Want Sex Again. And it's like a gentle step into pussy-centered living from this lens of an experience that so many of us have, especially when we are in longer-term relationship. And maybe there was a lot of, desire at some point in the relationship, but it has fizzled over time. And so it's really about reclaiming our desire, our turn on from a pussy centered lens. So that's available. I'll share the link with it there. And I would love to connect with people.
Amazing. Well, thank you everybody for listening to another episode of The Lounge. Please go take advantage of all these great resources from Jenny. Check out our episode in part 2 by going to the link below. And we'll see you all real soon. Thank you, Jenny, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Libido Lounge. Please don't keep me a secret. Please share this with your friends. You can find me on YouTube, on Instagram, as well as how to work with me at mylibidodoc.com.